The wind was like a hushed whisper through the deserted streets of Harrowsville as I stared into the black void beyond my office window. It was a quiet town, uneventful, at least until recently. The disappearances had begun to gnaw at the very soul of the place, turning what was once serene into something dark and fearful. Jalen, my new partner, sat across from me, shuffling through the files that chronicled our nightmarish case. Young, eager, and unburdened by the scars of the past, he looked up at me, questions dancing in his eyes. "What do you think is really happening, sir?" he asked, his voice quivering with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "Do you believe the stories?" "The stories," I mused, knowing precisely what he was referring to. The legend of Giggles, the clown whose laughter once filled the circus tent but now seemed to haunt the very ground it stood on. A laughter that many claimed to hear late at night, a sinister echo from beyond the grave. I leaned back in my chair, my thoughts wandering to days long gone. "You want to know if I believe that a ghostly clown is behind all this?" He nodded, almost sheepishly, clearly caught between his logical mind and the lure of the town's whispered tales. I smiled, though it was a smile devoid of warmth. "What I believe, Jalen, doesn't matter. It's what we can prove that counts." He looked at me, his youthful face searching for more, eager for a glimpse into the mind of a detective who had seen it all. "You're a good detective, Jalen," I continued, my voice softer, more reflective. "You're kind, foolish in a way that's almost refreshing, and you have that spark that promises greatness. But this case, it's not like any other." He leaned forward, the files forgotten, his entire being consumed by my words. "We're dealing with something more than just a madman or a vengeful spirit. There's an evil lurking here, something that's tied to the very core of this town, and the key may lie in our own pasts." Jalen's eyes widened, a realization dawning upon him. "You mean the connection between the missing children's parents and Carl Jenkins?" "Yes," I confirmed, my mind lost in the shadows of a history filled with secrets and sins. They were all childhood friends, and now their children are paying the price. The room fell into silence, the weight of our task settling over us like a shroud. The legend of Giggles was more than just a tale. It was a haunting melody that beckoned us to delve deeper, to unravel the threads that bound the present to the past. Finally, Jalen broke the silence, his voice determined. "Then we'll find the truth, sir, whatever it takes." I looked at him, a glimmer of hope stirring within me. Together we would face the darkness, unearth the hidden secrets, and confront the evil that lurked in the very heart of Harrowsville. The journey had just begun, and the path ahead promised to be one filled with horror, mystery, and revelations that could tear the very fabric of our lives apart. The investigation led us to the darker corners of Harrowsville, places where shadows seemed to cling like cobwebs, and secrets whispered through the wind. We began with the circus grounds, now a decaying skeleton of its former glory. Jalen looked uneasy as we approached the tattered big top, its once vibrant colors faded and consumed by time. "It feels like something's watching us," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I could see the trepidation in his eyes, but I knew that beneath it was a burning curiosity, the same curiosity that had driven me for years. "You'll get used to it," I replied, patting him on the back. "Let's see what this place has to offer." The old circus grounds were filled with haunting remnants of joy turned to sorrow. We searched through the rubble, old posters of Giggles the clown leering at us with painted smiles, their eyes hollow and unseeing. It was here that we found the first piece of the puzzle, a scorched photograph partially buried under the debris. I carefully picked it up, brushing off the dust, my heart skipping a beat as I recognized the faces of the missing children's parents, all young, all smiling, with Carl Jenkins himself standing among them. "Could this be a coincidence?" Jalen asked, peering over my shoulder. I shook my head, my instincts telling me there was more to this. "I doubt it. This photograph ties them directly to the circus and to Carl Jenkins. We need to dig deeper." Our next stop was the town's archive, where we pored over old newspapers and records. It was a slow process, but I could feel the tendrils of the mystery unraveling, leading us down a path that promised to uncover the hidden truths. Hours turned into days, and we were rewarded with more connections. We learned that Carl Jenkins had an identical twin brother named George, who had also been part of the circus but had disappeared without a trace after the fire. That the fire that had claimed Carl's life had been ruled as an accident, but had been shrouded in suspicion. There were whispers of foul play, whispers that had been silenced and buried, but were now resurfacing like restless ghosts. Jalen, his initial apprehension replaced by dogged determination, found a series of letters exchanged between the parents of the missing children, dating back to their teenage years. They were cryptic, filled with coded messages and veiled references to something they referred to as the laughing mirror. "What do you think it means?" Jalen asked, his eyes wide with intrigue. I looked at the letters, my mind racing, the pieces of the puzzle slowly falling into place, yet the full picture remaining tantalizingly out of reach. "I don't know," I admitted, a chill running down my spine. "But it's clear that they were involved in something they wanted to keep hidden." As we left the archive, the town of Harrowsville seemed to change before our eyes. It was no longer the quiet, unassuming place we thought we knew. It was a town filled with secrets that were intertwined with the legend of a clown's laughter and the shadow of an evil that refused to rest. The investigation was far from over, and we were only beginning to scratch the surface. But one thing was clear: we were on the brink of uncovering something profound, something that would challenge everything we thought we knew about Harrowsville and ourselves. The laughing mirror was calling to us, and we were drawn to its reflection, knowing that what lay beyond was a truth that could shatter our very souls. The days turned into weeks, and the secrets we unearthed began to cast a shadow over our lives. Sleep became a stranger, as the haunting laughter of giggles seemed to echo in our dreams. The line between reality and nightmare began to blur. Our investigation led us to an old woman named Agatha, who had been a seamstress at the circus. Her home was filled with relics from a time long past, including costumes she had sewn for the circus performers. Among them was the original costume of Giggles, now moth-eaten and stained, its empty eyes seeming to watch our every move. Agatha's hands were gnarled with age, but her eyes were sharp, filled with a knowing that sent a shiver down my spine. "The twins were different," she said, her voice a raspy whisper. "Carl was kind-hearted, but George had darkness in him. He delighted in the fear of others." As she spoke, she revealed a hidden room, filled with old photographs and letters, a secret shrine to a twisted past. In it were pictures of George, his eyes filled with a manic gleam, posing with terrified children. "We knew something was wrong with him," Agatha continued, her voice trembling, "but we never imagined how far he would go." She then told us of a secret chamber, the Hall of Laughter, where George would take the children, where he would perform for them, where he would torment them. Her words painted a picture so grotesque, so perverse, that Jalen had to leave the room, his face pale and his stomach turning. "I can take you there," Agatha offered, her eyes filled with a haunted sadness. "But be warned, the Hall of Laughter has a way of consuming those who enter." We accepted her offer, knowing that we had to face the horrors that awaited us. The path led us to a hidden underground chamber concealed beneath the circus grounds, a place where time seemed to stand still. The Hall of Laughter was a chamber of nightmares, filled with the remnants of George's twisted games. Masks made from human skin adorned the walls, their hollow eyes seeming to follow us. Desks filled with dissecting tools lay scattered around, and in the center of the room was a stage, covered in dried blood and adorned with grotesque trophies. We found diaries, filled with George's mad ramblings, his confessions, his justifications. The words were a window into a mind so deranged, so devoid of empathy that it defied comprehension. And then we found the photographs, the ones that made my blood run cold. Pictures of the missing children, their faces twisted in terror, their bodies contorted in pain, all captured for George's sick pleasure. As we left the Hall of Laughter, the weight of what we had discovered pressed down on us like a suffocating darkness. The truth was more horrifying than we could have ever imagined, a truth that threatened to consume us. We had unearthed the secrets of Harrowsville, but at a cost. Our innocence was lost, our souls forever marked by the evil we had uncovered. The laughter of Giggles would haunt us forever, a chilling reminder that true horror lies not in legends or ghost stories, but in the hearts of men. The chapter ended with a vow to bring George to justice, to make him pay for his crimes. But as we looked in the mirror, our eyes hollow and our faces drawn, we knew that we had been forever changed. The laughing mirror had shown us a reflection of ourselves we could never unsee, a darkness that lurked within, waiting to be unleashed. I returned to my office that night, a storm of emotions raging inside me. The grotesque images from the Hall of Laughter clung to my mind, refusing to be shaken loose. The disturbing revelations about George, the missing children, and the complicity of their parents weighed heavily on me. Jalen was there too, looking more troubled than I'd ever seen him. The naive glint in his eyes had been replaced by something darker, something wounded. "What now?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Now we dig deeper," I replied, determination stealing my voice. "We have to find George, we have to make him pay." We worked through the night, poring over the evidence, piecing together the twisted puzzle that was George's mind. As we delved into his diaries and listened to Agatha's recollections, a picture began to emerge. George was not just a murderer, he was a master manipulator. He had played the town like a fiddle, turning friends against each other, sowing seeds of mistrust and fear. He had used his twin brother's identity to create an alibi, to divert suspicion away from himself. And he had manipulated the parents, convincing them that Carl was the monster, that they had to take matters into their own hands. But why? What had driven him to such madness? What had made him turn against his own flesh and blood? The answer lay in their past, in a dark family secret that had festered like a wound. The twins' father had been a cruel and abusive man, a tormentor who had taken pleasure in their pain. George had snapped, his mind twisted by years of abuse. He had become the monster his father had made him, a living nightmare that fed on fear and pain. We discovered an old police report hidden away in the town's archives. It detailed a domestic disturbance at the Jenkins household, an incident that had been swept under the rug. The report was a smoking gun, a piece of evidence that tied the parents to the fire, to the murder of Carl. They had known about George all along, had been complicit in his crimes. The storm broke as dawn approached, the rain lashing against the windows, the thunder echoing the turmoil in our souls. We had unearthed the rot at the heart of Harrowsville, had exposed the dark underbelly of a town that had tried to bury its sins. "We have to confront them," Jalen said, his voice filled with a righteous anger. "We have to make them face what they've done." I looked at him, saw the fire in his eyes, and knew that he was right. We had to take the fight to them, to tear down the facade of respectability that they had built. The chapter ended with a resolution, a promise to bring George and the complicit parents to justice. But as we looked out at the rain-soaked town, we knew that our battle was just beginning. The laughing mirror had shown us the darkness within, had revealed the monsters that lurked in the shadows. We were no longer just detectives. We were warriors, fighting against an evil that threatened to consume us all. And as the rain washed away the grime and the filth, we knew that we were ready to face the storm, ready to confront the demons that haunted our town. We would not rest until justice was served, until the laughter of giggles was silenced forever. We knew we were being watched. The uneasy sensation crept over me as Jalen and I went about our investigation, digging further into the twisted history of George Jenkins, also known as Giggles. The feeling was palpable, a chilling prickle on the back of my neck that seemed to whisper, "He's here." The once lively streets of Harrowsville now felt menacing, shadows lurking in every corner, the laughter of children replaced by the hollow echoes of fear. We were no longer safe. George had noticed us. It started with cryptic messages left on our desks, crude drawings of clowns and notes written in a childlike scrawl. Each message was a taunt, a challenge, an invitation to dance with the devil. "He's trying to get inside our heads," Jalen said, his voice tinged with unease as he examined the latest message. "He wants us to see things his way." I couldn't help but shudder at the thought. To see the world through George's eyes was to embrace madness, to lose oneself in a nightmare of terror and depravity. But it was also a path to understanding, a way to unravel the enigma that was George Jenkins. The more we investigated, the more we were drawn into his web, captivated by the allure of his twisted logic. George saw himself as a performer, a maestro conducting a macabre symphony of fear and pain. He believed that his acts of terror were a form of art, a way to expose the hypocrisy and corruption of the town, to reveal the true face of humanity. He saw the children as his audience, their screams and tears as applause, their suffering as a tribute to his genius. And now he wanted us to join him. The invitation came in the form of a package, a grotesque mask crafted from human skin, its mouth twisted into a mocking grin. Along with the mask was a letter, a manifesto of sorts, written in George's elegant hand. "Detective Harris," it began, "I have watched you with great interest. You see the world as I do, understand the artistry in my work. You are not like the others, blinded by morality and weakness. Join me, embrace the beauty in the darkness, become a part of my masterpiece." I stared at the letter, my heart pounding, my mind reeling. George was offering me a glimpse into his soul, a chance to see the world through his eyes. The temptation was strong, the pull of the abyss intoxicating. I could feel George's presence, his voice whispering in my ear, promising power, understanding, freedom. But I also knew the cost. I looked at Jalen, saw the fear in his eyes, the doubt that gnawed at his soul. He too was struggling, torn between curiosity and revulsion. "We can't give in," I said, my voice firm, my resolve unbreakable. "We have to fight him, resist him, bring him to justice." Jalen nodded, his face pale but determined. "We'll do it together." We burned the mask and the letter, erasing George's touch, cleansing ourselves of his poison. But the shadow remained, the haunting specter of Giggles lingering in the corners of our minds. We knew that the battle had only just begun, that George would not give up, that he would continue to try to seduce us, to break us. But we were ready. We were warriors, fighting against the darkness, standing tall against the storm. We would not be broken. We would not be swayed. We would not be silenced. The laughter of Giggles would be silenced forever. As the investigation continued, George's game became more twisted, his messages more insidious. He was no longer content with merely taunting us. He wanted us to witness his madness, to understand it, to be consumed by it. The first video arrived without warning, a grotesque display of his macabre artistry. It was a performance, filmed in his so-called Hall of Laughter, a hidden chamber filled with the preserved bodies of his young victims. The room was decorated with nightmarish clown imagery, walls painted in garish colors, and the sound of eerie carnival music filling the air. In the video, George, as Giggles, performed a demented dance, his face hidden behind a mask of human flesh, his eyes gleaming with manic joy. He pranced around the room, laughing and singing, his voice a discordant melody of madness. The camera panned to his audience, a grotesque gallery of preserved children, their faces frozen in terror, their eyes vacant, their bodies contorted into unnatural poses. They were his trophies, his masterpieces, a testament to his genius. As the video played, I could feel George's eyes on me, his voice whispering in my ear, his laughter echoing in my mind. He was showing us his world, inviting us to join him, to lose ourselves in the horror. I glanced at Jalen, saw the terror in his eyes, the revulsion that twisted his face. We were both trapped, ensnared in George's web, unable to look away, unable to escape. The video ended with a close-up of George's face, his eyes filled with madness, his lips curled into a sinister smile. "Do you see now, Detective Harris?" he whispered, his voice dripping with malice. "Do you see the beauty in the darkness, the truth in the terror? Join me, embrace the chaos, become a part of my masterpiece." The screen went black and the room was filled with silence. I sat there, my mind reeling, my body numb. I could feel George's presence, his madness seeping into my soul, his darkness calling to me. But I also felt something else, a spark of understanding, a glimpse of the twisted logic that drove him. He saw himself as an artist, a visionary, a prophet. He believed that his acts of terror were a form of expression, a way to expose the hidden truths of humanity, to reveal the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. He wanted us to see what he saw, to understand what he understood, to be consumed by the chaos. I looked at Jalen, saw the confusion in his eyes, the doubt that gnawed at his soul. He too was struggling, torn between horror and fascination. "We can't let him win," I said, my voice firm, my resolve unbreakable. "We can't let him break us. We have to fight him, resist him, bring him to justice." Jalen nodded, his face pale but determined. "We'll do it together." We continued our investigation, digging deeper into George's past, uncovering the secrets that had shaped him, the traumas that had broken him. We learned about his twin brother Carl, about the fire that had destroyed their lives, about the darkness that had consumed George. But we also discovered something else, a hidden truth that lay beneath the surface, a revelation that would shake us to our core. George was not alone. He had followers, disciples who shared his vision, who embraced his madness. They were a hidden cult, a secret society, a dark brotherhood that worshipped the chaos, that reveled in the terror. They were the true architects of the horror, the puppet masters behind the nightmare. And they were watching us. Detective Harris and Jalen found themselves on the cusp of an abyss, peering into a world they never imagined existed. The discovery of the cult of chaos, George's hidden disciples, changed everything. They were no longer dealing with a lone madman, but a sinister network that reached into the very heart of Harrowsville. The next clue arrived in the form of a handwritten letter, stained with what looked to be a mix of paint and dried blood. It was an invitation to a secret gathering, a macabre celebration of chaos and madness. The letter was adorned with cryptic symbols, the twisted mark of the cult. "Join us, Detective Harris," the letter read. "Embrace the chaos, become one with the darkness. Witness the truth, see the beauty in the madness. We await you, we welcome you. The time has come." The letter was a clear challenge, a brazen taunt. George and his followers were no longer hiding. They were inviting them into their world, daring them to uncover the truth. They decided to attend the gathering, to infiltrate the cult, to see for themselves the horror that lay at the heart of the madness. With heavy hearts and minds filled with trepidation, they prepared to enter the abyss. The gathering was held in an underground chamber, hidden beneath the ruins of the old circus grounds. It was a place of darkness and despair, a shrine to chaos and madness. The walls were adorned with grotesque paintings, the floor stained with blood and filth. In the center of the room stood an altar, a twisted monument to terror. The cultists were dressed in tattered robes, their faces hidden behind masks of human flesh. They danced and chanted, their movements wild and frenzied, their voices a discordant cacophony of madness. As they watched, hidden in the shadows, they could feel the power of the chaos, the seductive lure of the darkness. They could see the beauty in the madness, the truth in the terror. George, as Giggles, was there, presiding over the gathering, his eyes ablaze with manic joy. He spoke to his followers, his voice a hypnotic melody of madness. "Embrace the chaos," he whispered. "Become one with the darkness. See the beauty in the madness, the truth in the terror. We are the chosen ones, the prophets of chaos, the heralds of a new era. We will tear down the old order. We will build a new world, a world of chaos and madness, a world where the truth is revealed, where the beauty is seen." His words were a siren song, a call to arms, a promise of enlightenment. They resonated with something deep within them, something primal and raw. As the ceremony reached its climax, George revealed his latest masterpiece, a grotesque sculpture of human flesh and bone, a living testament to his genius. It was a child, one of his victims, preserved and transformed, a work of art, a monument to chaos. The cultists cheered and applauded, their faces twisted with ecstasy and delight. They saw the beauty in the madness, the truth in the terror. And so did Harris and Jalen. They realized with a shock of understanding that they were no longer merely observers, no longer detached and objective. They were part of the madness, consumed by the chaos, seduced by the darkness. They saw the beauty in the madness, the truth in the terror, and they knew that they would never be the same again. The chapter ended, leaving them at a crossroads, torn between horror and fascination, caught in a web of madness and deceit. The investigation had become a descent into madness, a journey into a world of chaos and terror, a world where the line between sanity and insanity was blurred, where the darkness called and the madness beckoned. George's world had become their world, and they were trapped, ensnared in his web, unable to escape, unable to resist. The horrors they had witnessed, the truths they had uncovered, the madness they had embraced had changed them, had marked them, had scarred them. They were no longer the men they had been, no longer the detectives they had been. They were something else, something new, something different. They were the chosen ones, the prophets of chaos, the heralds of a new era. And they knew that they had only begun to scratch the surface of the horror, that there were still secrets to uncover, still truths to reveal, still madness to embrace. The abyss awaited, and they were ready to take the plunge. The days grew darker, the nights longer. George's presence seemed to linger in the shadows, his laughter echoing in the wind, his madness infecting everything around us. The investigation had taken us to places we never expected, had revealed truths we never wanted to know. And now we were on the brink of something even more terrifying. The cult of laughter. It was a name that sent chills down my spine, a name that conjured images of twisted rituals and nightmarish ceremonies. It was a secret society hidden in the shadows, its members drawn from the darkest corners of humanity. They were men and women who had embraced George's vision, who had been consumed by his madness, who had become a part of his dark masterpiece. They were artists, musicians, performers, all united by a shared belief in the power of chaos, the beauty of terror, the truth in madness. They saw the world as a stage, a canvas on which to paint their dark fantasies, a playground in which to explore their deepest desires. They were the puppet masters behind the nightmare, the architects of the horror. They were the ones who had orchestrated the kidnappings, who had created the Hall of Laughter, who had nurtured George's madness. And they were watching us. We could feel their eyes on us, their presence lurking in the shadows, their whispers in the wind. They knew we were getting close, knew we were unraveling their secrets, knew we were a threat, but they also knew something else. They knew we were fascinated. They knew we were drawn to their world, entranced by their vision, tempted by their madness. They knew we wanted to understand, wanted to see, wanted to experience. And they were right. I could feel it, a dark attraction, a morbid curiosity, a twisted desire. I wanted to know more, wanted to see more, wanted to understand more. I wanted to unravel the mystery, to expose the truth, to bring them to justice. But I also wanted to join them. I wanted to lose myself in the chaos, to be consumed by the madness, to become a part of the nightmare. I looked at Jalen, saw the same conflict in his eyes, the same struggle in his soul. He too was torn, trapped between duty and desire, between sanity and insanity. We were both on the brink, teetering on the edge, one step away from falling. We continued our investigation, delving deeper into the cult of laughter, uncovering their secrets, exposing their rituals. We discovered their hidden chambers, their secret symbols, their twisted beliefs. We learned about their ceremonies, their performances, their art. We saw their paintings, their sculptures, their videos. We heard their music, their poetry, their laughter. We were drawn into their world, entranced by their vision, consumed by their madness. But we also knew we had to stop them, had to fight them, had to bring them to justice. We had to resist the temptation, had to overcome the attraction, had to break free from the madness. But it was not easy. The closer we got, the more we saw, the more we understood, the harder it became to resist. The cult of laughter was not just a group of madmen and lunatics. They were visionaries, prophets, artists. They saw the world in a way that no one else did, understood truths that no one else could, created beauty that no one else could imagine. They were a reflection of humanity, a mirror of our darkest desires, a glimpse of our hidden selves. And they were calling to us, tempting us, inviting us to join them. The line between sanity and madness was blurring, the boundary between duty and desire fading, the distinction between right and wrong disappearing. We were on the brink, teetering on the edge, one step away from falling, and we were not sure if we could stop ourselves. The days following the cult's meeting blurred into a feverish haze. As Detective Harris, I found myself obsessed with the cult of chaos, with George's twisted philosophy, with the dark master that lurked behind the scenes. Jalen seemed equally affected, his once bright eyes now shadowed with a darkness that mirrored my own. I knew that we were being pulled deeper into the madness, that we were losing ourselves to the chaos, but I couldn't stop myself. The dark master called to me, whispered to me in my dreams, beckoned me with promises of power and knowledge. I began to research the history of the cult, digging into ancient texts and forbidden tomes, uncovering a trail of darkness that stretched back through the ages. The cult of chaos was not a new phenomenon. It was an ancient order, a secret society that had existed for millennia, guided by a dark and powerful entity. The Dark Master was real, a being of pure evil, a satanic entity that had been around for ages, manipulating and corrupting, pulling the strings from the shadows. It was a god of chaos, a lord of madness, a ruler of the abyss. I could feel its presence, sense its power, hear its voice. It was calling to me, drawing me closer, inviting me to join its ranks, to become a servant of chaos, a disciple of madness. The more I learned, the more I understood, the more I realized that I was being offered a choice that would change everything. I could reject the Dark Master, turn away from the chaos, try to regain my sanity, try to save my soul. Or I could embrace the darkness, accept the chaos, become a servant of the Dark Master, join the ranks of the chosen ones, the prophets of chaos, the heralds of a new era. I knew what I had to do. I knew what I wanted to do. I chose chaos. I chose madness. I chose the Dark Master. I told Jalen of my decision, my choice. I saw the fear in his eyes, the doubt, the uncertainty. But I also saw the fascination, the temptation, the desire. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I knew what he was thinking, what he was feeling. I knew that he was at a crossroads, torn between horror and fascination, caught in a web of madness and deceit. I knew that he would follow me, that he would join me, that he would choose chaos, choose madness, choose the Dark Master. And so we became servants of chaos, disciples of madness, followers of the Dark Master. We embraced the darkness, accepted the chaos, surrendered to the madness. We were no longer detectives, no longer investigators. We were something else, something new, something different. We were the chosen ones, the prophets of chaos, the heralds of a new era. We were servants of the Dark Master, disciples of the abyss. And we knew that we had only begun to scratch the surface of the horror, that there were still secrets to uncover, still truths to reveal, still madness to embrace. The abyss awaited, and we were ready to take the plunge. The Dark Master awaited, and we were ready to serve. The chaos awaited, and we were ready to embrace. The madness awaited, and we were ready to become. In the days and nights that followed, I, Samuel Harris, found myself descending further into the abyss of madness, losing myself to the chaos, surrendering to the Dark Master's will. The whispers grew louder, the dreams more vivid, the urges more insistent. I began to change, physically, mentally, spiritually. My face twisted into a grotesque grin, my eyes darkened to an unnatural shade of black, my skin pale and cold to the touch. My laughter became a terrifying cackle, my movements jerky and unnatural, my thoughts fragmented and chaotic. I became a creature of horror, a living nightmare, a monstrous parody of my former self. I became a horrifying clown creature, a servant of the evil leader, a disciple of the Dark Master. The transformation was painful, agonizing, terrifying, but it was also exhilarating, liberating, empowering. I felt alive, more alive than I had ever felt before, more alive than I had ever thought possible. I was no longer constrained by the rules of society, by the laws of morality, by the boundaries of sanity. I was free to explore the darkness, to embrace the chaos, to indulge in the madness. I was free to commit acts of graphic, morbid horror, to revel in the terror, to feast on the fear. And so I did. I stalked the night, hunting for victims, seeking out those who would taste my madness, who would share in my horror, who would become part of my chaos. I found them one by one, those who were lost, those who were lonely, those who were afraid. I found them and I showed them. I showed them the darkness, the chaos, the madness. I showed them the horror, the terror, the fear. I showed them the blood, the gore, the violence. I showed them the laughter, the joy, the ecstasy. I showed them the abyss, the void, the nothingness. I showed them and they became part of me, part of my madness, part of my chaos, part of my horror. And I laughed. I laughed as I killed, as I maimed, as I tortured. I laughed as I dismembered, as I disemboweled, as I devoured. I laughed as I danced, as I sang, as I celebrated. I laughed as I became, as I was, as I am. I laughed and the darkness laughed with me. The chaos laughed with me. The madness laughed with me. I laughed and I knew. I knew that I had become something else. Something new, something different. I knew that I had become a horrifying clown creature, a servant of the evil leader, a disciple of the Dark Master. I knew that I had become a prophet of chaos, a herald of a new era, a chosen one. I knew that I had become, that I was, that I am. And I laughed. The darkness had become my home, the madness my sanctuary, the horror my art. I was no longer Detective Samuel Harris. I was a creature of chaos, a servant of the evil leader, a horrifying clown forged by a satanic entity. But then something began to shift. Whispers of doubt crept into my mind, echoes of my former self calling out to me, fragments of my old life haunting my dreams. Memories of my partner Jalen, of our friendship, of our mission, began to surface, breaking through the chaos, cutting through the madness. And then, a moment of clarity. I found myself standing in the Hall of Laughter, the grotesque hall where George had performed for the kidnapped children, the place where he had shown me his horrific world. It was there that I saw it, a reflection in a twisted mirror, a revelation in the laughing glass. The face staring back at me was not a monstrous clown, but a man, a human being, broken and lost. I saw the fear, the pain, the despair, the emptiness. I saw myself. The Dark Master's grip on me began to waver. The evil leader's hold on me began to weaken. I felt a pull, a tug, a yearning for something more, something real, something true. I fought back. With a newfound determination, I began to unravel the Dark Master's control, to untangle the evil leader's web, to reclaim my humanity, to regain my sanity. It was a battle, a struggle, a war within myself. I fought with everything I had, with all that I was, with all that I could be. I fought, and I won. I emerged from the darkness, from the chaos, from the madness, A man once again scarred and wounded, but alive and whole. But the horror was not over. In a final shocking twist, I discovered the true nature of the Dark Master, the evil leader, the satanic entity. It was not a supernatural force, not a demonic being, not a god or a devil. It was a part of me. It was my own darkness, my own chaos, my own madness, a manifestation of my own fears, my own doubts, my own demons. I had created it, I had embraced it, I had become it. And in doing so, I had become the very thing I had feared, the very thing I had fought, the very thing I had sworn to stop. The horrifying clown creature, the servant of evil, the disciple of darkness, was me. I was the monster. The realization was devastating, the truth unbearable, the reality incomprehensible. I had become what I had sought to destroy. I had become my own worst enemy. I had become my own nightmare. The laughter rang in my ears, the echoes of my own madness, the sounds of my own horror, the music of my own tragedy. I laughed and I wept, for I knew that I had lost, that I had failed, that I had fallen. I knew that I had become, that I was, that I am, and I knew that I would never be the same again.